You guys probably have seen at this point, but Dan Houser went on the Lex Fridman podcast. Now, Dan Houser, if you don't know, English video game writer and producer, co-founder of Rockstar, along with his brother Sam. And if you don't know him somehow, he's one of those people that kind of largely is focused on the work, stays in the studio, doesn't do a lot of press, doesn't go and make everything about himself. He's just a fantastic video game designer, and he does what he does. But as you can see, his resume is quite impressive. Writer on Bully, GTA 4, all of these like DLCs and spin-offs. Red Dead, he was the executive producer. Red Dead Undead Nightmare, writer. LA Noire, executive producer. Max Payne 3, executive producer and writer. GTA 5, executive producer and writer. Red Dead 2, executive producer and writer. Red Dead Online, executive producer and writer. Untitled: A Better Paradise game, TBA. He's worked on all sorts of stuff. And specifically, as you can see here, he departed Rockstar. In February 2020, Rockstar Games parent company Take-Two Interactive announced Houser's resignation from Rockstar Games. He left Rockstar on 11th March 2020 following an extended break in 2019. And then he created a couple of other entities as well. But in this interview with Lex Fridman, he outlines, of course, a ton of stuff. It's a almost 3-hour interview. Obviously, we're not going to go through the whole thing. But he outlines a ton of stuff and also discusses some specifics as it regards to, or in regards to Rockstar's culture with the development of GTA 6, also the discussion around the development of Red Dead 2, all sorts of really genuinely interesting tidbits that as of yet have been just in his head. Like, these have not been made public and not been discussed. And it's always fascinating to me because, as with all creative ventures, there's and industries really, there's different types of people. You know, there's some that really like to be the center of attention. There's the people that like to go and do the stage presentation. They like to do the interviews. They like for everybody to talk about how they are the genius behind this game. They love the applause, you know. And then there's other guys that are just here to do the work, and they just go and they do the thing that they do and they're good at. And they kind of stay in the background, stay in the shadows. And that's much more Dan Houser. You know, he's much less Hideo Kojima, much less Todd Howard, and much more Hidetaka Miyazaki. Like, Miyazaki could go on stage at the Game Awards every year. They'd give him an hour. He could just go give a speech rambling about nonsense because he's so accomplished at this point. But he doesn't, because that's not his thing. He's a game designer. That's not what he wants to do. And so it's always important and it's a big deal when he decides to come out and talk. But this first little segment I want to look at is specifically hard work and Rockstar's culture of excellence, discussing how they handle developing games, what their approach is, and kind of what makes them exceptional.
One of the most upvoted questions on Reddit about GTA 5 from a fan. GTA 5 is my favorite game ever made. I spent over 1,000 hours in the world of GTA 5 and GTA Online. GTA 4 is a hard second or third. It never ceases to impress me. When you lead a team of over 1,000 people to make a masterpiece like GTA 5 or Red Dead Redemption 2, how do you ensure that the bar of perfection is always met? How is that even possible? We know the answer isn't money, because there's other studios with a lot of money and they are 2 decades behind Rockstar. So what does it take to create these worlds, to create these incredibly compelling games?
Great question. It's a question I think everybody in the industry is wondering. How is it that they can put out Red Dead 2, and Red Dead 2, if it launched today, would still be considered cutting edge, incredibly beautiful in terms of presentation? It would be, I mean, it's just fantastic. It's a good question. And a lot of people have wondered that. I've also been wondering why the hell you would use this type of keyboard willingly. This is like one of those ergonomic, like, space keyboards. I feel like this keyboard you just use to like make people ask you about it. Like, what the hell is this? What are we doing? Sorry. Anyway.
I think I mean, certainly when I was at Rockstar, I was a worker amongst workers. You know, the culture was one of excellence and tried to provide creative clarity and people just, you know, and also an ambition to make. I think we thought GTA 3 could be really popular, but really popular to us meant, quite honestly, it's going to sell 2 or 3 million copies. And we thought we were making something pretty innovative. I mean, we knew we were making something innovative, but we didn't know if people would understand how innovative it was. And then when we got the chance to make Vice City and to try and repeat it, I think every time from then on, the team was very driven to make something better and to use, long before we had lots of resources, to use time and whatever money we had to always put impressive stuff on the screen, always think about what we can do to push the medium of video games and the sort of medium of building fake worlds further. And that was always, it was both clarity of here's what we're trying to do, here's what the tone of the game is going to be, here's how features will fit into that, and so why these features would work and these features wouldn't work. Because fundamentally, by 2002, you could put pretty much any feature into a game you wanted. There wasn't a technical limitation. It was just making it cohesive. And then it was also just everyone committing to a culture of excellence.
And I think that this is really crucial. It's about setting the standards and the expectations of what you're going to achieve. Like we all know that for a lot of these companies, the goal is not necessarily to make the most innovative, compelling open world game or narrative game possible. For some studios, it is the prerogative, but for a lot of them, it's not. Usually there's a secondary directive, which is that you're building in, like in the case of AC Shadows, you're building in secondary systems to generate long-term revenue. And your goal is maybe not to make the most compelling thing or the most innovative thing, but your goal is to also create something that's going to hook players long-term. So you're trying to build something that players, like you hook players for 1,000 hours or for 200 hours. But again, not necessarily because that is what's best for the game, but that's because the corporate guys want to have players hooked because they have data that shows when you play a game for 250 hours, you're way more likely to spend money on the DLC, or you're way more likely to buy cosmetics and this. So they want you to build something that you play for 200 hours, even if that 200 hours is kind of bland and boring, you know? And so it's really important at the start, what is our ultimate goal? Because every studio will tell you we're trying to make the best game possible. And I think that they are trying to make the best game possible, given the restraints, given the walls they have to work within. But with most companies, there's secondary and third level, fourth level requirements and expectations and demands from the higher ups that you also have to meet and fulfill. And it's been one of the points of concern with the post GTA Online era of Rockstar. People forget, but in the lead up to Red Dead Redemption 2, there was a lot of skepticism, specifically around like monetization and presentation, and whether or not they would actually be able to live up to expectations to take up the gameplay experience up a level. But there was the concern that they would just turn it into GTA Online, that they would just turn this whole thing into an online game where it's all live service and it's all about instead of shark cards, you buy the gold bars, even in the single player game. And then it crosses over with the online game. And it's all this big hybrid of online live service with the single player narrative. And nowadays we know what Red Dead 2 ended up being. So of course that seems like, of course they didn't do that. But at the time we didn't know that. The concern was that Take-Two was going to start to put that secondary demand onto them to not just make the most innovative game, not just make the most compelling open world game the world had probably ever seen at that point, but rather that they would put secondary demands on that you need to also make players play it for 500 hours. You need to also add in dynamic, constantly changing open world activity so that players get hooked on and play all the time. And that sort of happened with the Red Dead 2 Online or Red Dead Online. That kind of fell apart because it just, players weren't that compelled. There's a lot more freedom you have with GTA Online than you do with Red Dead Online. I still know people that like Red Dead Online, but it's certainly nowhere near the success that GTA Online is. But all this to say, I mean, this was a concern back then that Red Dead 2 would be affected by the success of GTA Online. And it's also a concern that, you know, GTA 6 will be affected by it as well. But I think at this point, you know, Rockstar has demonstrated they know what they're doing. So Take-Two largely has the approach of just let them figure it out. One of the best comments I actually saw, and again, it was so refreshing, actually came from Strauss Zelnick. And if you don't know Strauss Zelnick, apparently when you Google his name, you get the corporate photo of him, but you also get shirtless pictures of him working out with pants sagging very low. So there you go. But Strauss Zelnick did an interview where he said his ultimate goal and mandate as the CEO of a big company like this is to empower the best and most creative people, to hire them and preserve that talent, and then to get out of their way, which is so refreshing to hear an executive say, my job is to get out of the creative person's way. Very refreshing, because not many companies have that outlook. Not many. A lot of these companies, like you get the Yves Guillemot, who's like, I'm going to sit in on your development meeting and then I'm going to put my son as CEO of your company and he will figure out how to make it better. Even though he's clearly bad at this. Like, it's just terrible. But that's how a lot of these guys view it. Every executive thinks that they're genius and thinks that they're brilliant in every regard when they're probably not. But at Take-Two, the parent company of Rockstar, their approach is more to just get out of their way. And I find that very refreshing. Very, very refreshing. Flem Nasty, thank you for the 5. The stock market and politics ruined writing. It's all profit now. Rockstar still makes art for art that moves people instead of preaching. Well, I think they just have very talented writers, and Dan was one of those writers who's since left. I mean, this will be the first game without him. GTA 6 will be. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, they just have a culture of compelling narratives, full stop. And they definitely know what they're doing. They're not chasing trends. They're not chasing whatever, the current meta is for writing. It's like, oh, Marvel's really popular right now. Let's just make Ant-Man, but set in this universe. Like, thankfully, they're not doing that. But anyway, continuing.
Sorry, an award-winning director and virtual reality game maker who worked with you on a number of Grand Theft Auto games spoke highly about his time working with you. Quote, we always worked ourselves to the bone, but it wasn't coming from the top down. Sam and Dan always rolled up their sleeves, and they were always there. They never left us holding the bag. We all thought we were making badass shit, so it didn't matter how hard we worked. So I'm sure there were some tough grinds.
Finishing it is certainly, it's tough, but it also is, intensely rewarding. And
I think also that there is a sense among everybody that works at Rockstar and the former executives and everybody, there's some exceptions, but there's a sense that there was really capable and competent leadership at the top, and everybody was on board with the vision. Everybody understood what they were making, and that was kind of a unifying force. Everybody got what Red Dead 2 is going to be like, and so you work your ass off for it. Everybody got what GTA 5 was supposed to be, so you work your ass off to achieve it. They are very good at setting the vision and accomplishing it. In other words, like they set up the nails and then the team goes and hits the nail in. A lot of other companies haven't worked that way, especially in the post-COVID era, where it seemed like for whatever reason, a lot of games started to be built as though the team was a hammer in search of a nail, just trying to find something. And in some cases, they destroyed the whole studio before they even found the right nail. In the case of like Concord, where they're just like, we're going to make a big live service game. Not sure how or what it will be. We're not really starting with an amazing idea. We're just starting with Overwatch, but Guardians of the Galaxy. And we'll figure it out the rest, I guess. And a lot of other companies have also done that, where they just start to try and build something, but they're not even sure. It's the same thing like Todd Howard said in an interview that they didn't find the fun in Starfield until like 2021, which is wild, because he's like, yeah, until that point, the game wasn't fun at all. 2021, it started to be fun, which is funny because a lot of other people felt like they never found the fun. But the game was originally expected to launch probably around 2022, if not 2021. So it took them until the original launch date or just before it to find the fun in the game. So like they were searching for the game while they were making it. And I think you can tell in the final product, it wasn't super clear. It's why I'm more bullish on Elder Scrolls 6 than I was on Starfield, because I think that it's pretty clear to understand the vision of what Elder Scrolls 6 should be. Todd should be able to describe that to the team and everybody knows what they're making. With Starfield, I don't think they really knew what they were making. But with Rockstar, I think it's a similar thing where they know what they're making. They can pretty clearly explain it and set the vision up for the whole team, so everybody's unified in that regard. Rockstar also, as I'm sure he's going to discuss, was a company overwhelmed with crunch culture. Leslie Benzies, who would eventually leave and start Build a Rocket Boy, which put out, of course, Mind's Eye this year. Leslie was known as being one of the head honchos at Rockstar, who also was a big proponent of crunch culture. And there was a very, very common thing. So I'm sure he's about to discuss that, though.
And you get something done and you've made something. And that feeling is as you say, really, really incredible. I mean, it can sometimes feel a bit empty as well. Because it's when you finish it, you're like, oh, my life's got nothing to it. And then you have to, but that's the same with any big undertaking that you take. I don't think that, when you're working that hard, you do not have a good work-life balance. Mm-hmm. But the truth is you're not working that hard all of the time. So you have to just manage it slightly differently.
Man, that's such a heavy thing about the human experience. I've talked to Olympic gold winners, and many of them face real depression after they win the gold medal.
Yeah.
Because they've been pursuing a thing that they deeply care about. This has been everything, and they are so truly happy to do it. And then it's like, what else is there in life? What compared to this? What else is there? So that's the ups and downs of life. You need the darkness, you need the lows to really experience the highs.
I do think that's true. You can accomplish great things in life. You can have a lot of money. Won't make you happy. I forget what poet said it, but he was like, yeah, money doesn't buy you happiness, but it allows you to be very comfortable in your misery. I think that's true. And in the case of these guys, like, just imagine, I mean, in their case, thankfully, for them, they worked their ass off for like 5 to 6 years building a game. And it launches, is commercially huge. People praise it as a masterpiece. They get laudations and all awards and all that. Imagine though, for a lot of other people elsewhere in the industry, they work for 5-6 years, and the game may launch and still be like a flop. The game may launch and be chastised or mocked or ridiculed for this or that. Like, it happens all the time, but imagine like the how bad that is for your mental health as well. Especially if you weren't like a designer, it wasn't your fault that it flopped. You just did your job and somebody else screwed it up. In the same case, like I still stand by this. I think that Forspoken was a very impressive, solid game, totally demolished and destroyed by awful writing. And some bad performances too. And ultimately that lands on the directors, on the writers and everything. But like, they had a pretty interesting combat system. They had a pretty beautiful world with interesting presentation and all that. But the writing was so god awful, nobody could get to it. Nobody could even get to the point where they were appreciating the combat because of how god awful the writing was. And so the people that did the combat worked their asses off, did really good work, did a great job. But it was because a different department elsewhere in the studio screwed stuff up that they failed and that they lost their jobs and the studio got shut down. Like, that's got to be so freaking frustrating and depressing too. Like, when you did everything right, but because some other person in a different area of the studio screwed up, you and everybody else suffers. Like, it's got to be so miserable. But anyway, continuing.
Let me ask you about the pressure. There's an insane level of excitement and expectation for Grand Theft Auto 6. Same was true for GTA 5 and GTA 4, and even before that. And you and the team delivered every time. How difficult was it to do creative work under such pressure, where everyone expects this to be a success?
I was pretty good at compartmentalizing, and it just saying, and I try just to go, and when with all creative work, I go, well, I feel like a terrible fraud, but I haven't been found out yet. Just do my best, and hopefully I won't be found out this time. And just, if I can go, I tried hard with the work. I tried to do it with integrity. I tried not to copy someone else. Probably done all of the above, try to bring something new to it. And we as a group made something we are proud of. Then that's enough. You can't, if you don't want to go insane, or if I didn't want to go insane, I couldn't sit there and worry about financial results. If we made something great and it didn't sell, that would have to be okay. Because the goal is to make something that's, video games are expensive, so it is a sort of commercial form of creativity. It's a commercial art form, so you have to be in mind, you're spending large amounts of someone else's money. You have to try and make it back for them. But at the same time, my argument with myself was, well, the way to make it back is to try and make something great. So both pressures are pointing in the same direction. I think GTA 4 was very pressured because there'd been all this pressure on the company. The company nearly imploded several times due to hot coffee. It was extremely tough.
So they describe this, just to read it because I don't think they'll describe it. In 2005, modders discovered hidden sexual content in GTA San Andreas called Hot Coffee, a mini game where players could engage in explicit scenes with girlfriends. Though inaccessible without mods or modifications, its presence on the disc triggered a massive scandal. The game was re-rated to adults only, pulled from shelves, and Rockstar faced lawsuits and congressional hearings. Those were the days, man. Those were the days. Like 2005, congressional hearings, video games cause violence, video games are causing war. Like it's a thing. It's a thing that happened. Nowadays, it's like there's already been discussions, at least in the US. I don't know, maybe people in chat from other parts of the world could say if it's happening in your countries. I know like Australia, for example, has a very aggressive ratings board and regulators. But in the US, there's been discussions. I forget what event it was, but there was an event recently. Oh, I think it was the Charlie Kirk stuff, where the alleged shooter in that case was a fan of Helldivers and had written something that had to do with Helldivers, like one of the orbital strikes or something on like a shell casing, I think it was. And so there were congressional or members of Congress calling for video game developers to like come in, and they were trying to suggest that video games were responsible for making this type of thing happen. So this is something that even happens now. Maybe it didn't actually get to the point where they are pulling games from shelves and stuff. It's not happening to that degree, but this same sort of reactionary content, especially from legislators, is a very, very common thing that's happened for the last 30, 40 years since video games have existed. And it's not just gaming, it happens in TV shows and movies. I remember after Columbine, well, I don't remember because was Columbine 99? I was like 2 years old. But when Columbine happened, for example, a lot of people said Marilyn Manson, the musician, was responsible for it. And so there was discussion over banning music and stuff. So it's just an age-old thing where people try to put the blame of some societal issue on video games or on some piece of media or entertainment. It's like people aren't going to church as much in the 60s. It's Elvis's fault, or it's the Beatles because they didn't get haircuts, that type of thing.
I think that felt very stressful. GTA 3, the company.
But yeah, circling back to this, the company was really, really struggling because their biggest game, their massive investment, was now being rated adults only. So you couldn't buy it unless you had an ID proving you were over the age of 18, which 2005 was a much bigger deal than now. Nowadays, you can kind of just go online, say you're 18 and buy the game on Steam. It's whatever, at least in the States. Maybe in the UK, you have to prove your age, but in the States, you can just bypass it even if you're under 18. Back in 2005, you were going to a brick and mortar store and you needed to show the ID. Like you needed to prove it. I remember going to a GameStop in 2013 when I would have been like 15, 16 years old. And I wanted to get Far Cry 3, but I didn't have, of course, an ID showing I was over the age of 18. So the guy at GameStop wouldn't sell me Far Cry 3. So I got turned away. And then I brought my dad back. And then the guy behind the counter at GameStop convinced my dad not to let me get Far Cry 3 because it was too intense. I remember the GameStop guy being like, yeah, it's really intense. It's really intense. I was like, you're the GameStop dude. And you're like, what? I felt so betrayed. I was like, I brought my dad, who's the adult, who's going to get the game for me, which is how it works. Like the adult can buy his kid the game. And then the GameStop guy was convincing my dad not to get the game because he thought it was too hardcore. And I'm not a child. I'm not 7 years old. I was like in high school. And after that, I was like, I'm going to destroy GameStop for not. But I remember what that guy looked like. He's still in my head. If I ever see him again, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. Yeah, he did not slay. Indeed. Yeah. I'm sure in his mind, he was like, I'm being a responsible guy. I'm helping the next generation. But I was like, Far Cry 3 also is not like that intense. It's not like I was buying like Postal or something like that. Like I wasn't buying Serial Killer Simulator. Like I'm buying Far Cry 3. Like, what are you talking about? It was crazy. It's crazy. Lo-Fi Lazy, by the way, thank you for the 5. Just here to praise Dispatch again before you said it's like The Boys. And I honestly feel more like Invisible meets Office Space. Such good writing. Yeah, dude, for real, if anybody has not played Dispatch, the new game from Ad Hoc Studios, former devs of like Telltale Games, Dispatch, fantastic. Very, very good. Fantastic writing, great performances. Aaron Paul is even in it. It's very good. Highly recommend it. All this to say though, yeah, in 2005, being adults only, huge deal.
Was basically broke.
Today it still would be. I don't know if Steam even sells adults only games anymore. So adults only as a rating would be a big deal. But yeah. Nowadays, you know who runs the ESRB, like the ratings board? You know who like is in charge of all of it? It's all like representatives put forward by the big gaming corporations. So the people who have a vested interest in their games not going adults only are the ones that are indirectly in charge of the board that puts ratings on games. Very interesting.
But I was young, I didn't really care. You know, I wasn't living in the grown-up world yet. All of them had their own pressure. All of the games had their own pressure. All the more I felt I'd gone into it creatively and tried to be more ambitious. For me personally, I felt more pressure. You know, when it came out that would have been the right choice. Because again, if you're trying to take big swings creatively and you've spent a lot of money, that can be quite stressful. You know, I think with Red Dead 2, when you know we were behind schedule, we were over budget so much I didn't want to think about it, and you're making a game about a cowboy dying of TB, and the game's not coming together. Turns out a lot of people doubt you at that moment. You know, it's not that fun. So I think that was a lot of pressure. But you know, anything doing something new, you know, the new stuff, they're not.
It's so crazy to think that Red Dead 2 was at one point massively over budget and they were doubting whether it was going to be successful at all. Like it's so interesting because of course we see the game now and it's like, it's a masterpiece. But there was a time where they were like, it's a game about a cowboy with tuberculosis. How is this fun? How is it like? Why would we do that? What have we done? What have we done?
Say pressure on releasing a comic.
But it's also really interesting in hearing the humility with this too, where it's about the team, it's about working hard. It's not thinking about financial or commercial success. They're not building it to try and find a mass market. They're not looking at other games and being like, well, this franchise had this player base. This one had this player base. We're going to meld the two. You know, people love Marvel movies. They love the writing there. They find those games or those movies funny. So let's take that writing. And people love Overwatch. Let's put that together. And let's put, you know, the Marvel movies, but with Overwatch gameplay. We'll make tons of money. And it's just so soulless and lifeless instead of what you're hearing here, where it's like a team of passionate devs trying to put together the best thing they possibly can.
In the same way, because it's not taken as long, but you know, if you're making things, there's always pressure that people are going to like it.
Why do you think there was so much excitement about GTA 4, GTA 5, and now GTA 6?
Because
yeah, this is insane, dude. First 24 hours, GTA 4 made $310 million and sold 3.6 million copies. Fantastic success. Again, GTA 4, like back in the day. GTA 5, first 24 hours made $800 million and sold 11.2 million copies. Somebody was asking on stream the other day, I think we turned it into a clip or a YouTube short, TikTok thing. Somebody was asking how many copies I expect GTA 6 to sell. They're like, do you think it sells 10 million copies in the first day? Like, yeah. Yes. I think more. I think GTA 6, that first day, breaking records again, dude. Like it's going to have, I think, a quantifiable impact on like the electrical grid. I think internet service providers will go down and have droppages because so many people are downloading
donated $10 through Super Chat. Luke, this is the GameStop guy. I'm sorry that I didn't sell you Far Cry 3. The game was awesome. I mean intense. I hope you would forgive me.
Thank you for the 10. That might make up for it a little bit. But dude, it would be so freaking funny if that guy actually ended up being like a viewer or something. And it's like, oh my God, I remember this young looking weird kid with a big nose that came in with his dad and wanted Far Cry 3, and I convinced him not to get it. That would be so freaking funny. That'd be so freaking funny if he was actually a fan. What happened is, at least in my town, there were like 3 or 4 GameStops, and like 3 of them closed, and there was just 1 left. And that guy ended up going to that last one. He like moved to 2 different GameStops before going to the final one. And I haven't been in a GameStop in ages, so I don't know if he still works there, but he worked there for years and years and years and years. He was like the manager of it. So yeah, he's probably still around, still plays games, still passionate about gaming and everything. But yeah. If I ever see him, I'll get that guy. Thank you for the 10, my friend. Thank you. Continuing on.
They don't come out.
Yeah. Point is, GTA 6 will break records, I think.
That regularly. And I think we did a really good job of constantly innovating within what the IP was. The games always felt different. You know, people have very strong feelings. I like this one. I didn't like that one as much, because they are pretty different. So there would be simultaneously where you know what's going to happen. It's a Grand Theft Auto, you know it's going to be a game about being a criminal, but the way it's going to be a game is going to change quite a lot. So I think the way the IP kept evolving meant people being really excited to play it. And we were good at marketing them as well. We really tried to market them in a way that felt like an update of classic film marketing, where you really felt like you were already in the product just because you'd seen the trailers and stuff.
You mentioned that you have...
It is interesting because I think to a certain extent, Rockstar is at a point where they're so big and their reputation is so good that it would honestly be very difficult for them to fail that initial wave of hype. Like, the expectations are just really, really high. And it's because they have years and years of great games under their belt, and they have a great reputation, and that certainly helps. But I think the hype for GTA 6 was going to be high, whether they did like a really, really extensive marketing campaign, or if they did what they've been doing, which is just shadow dropping a couple of trailers, which is like not much, like really not much. Too big to fail now, lol. I think for the hype cycle, yeah, I think they could literally not drop another trailer until launch, and it would still be wildly successful, I think. I don't think they need to market this thing at all. The hype is there. I don't think they're too big to fail when it comes to like the actual game. If the product ends up launching and it's super buggy and broken, if the story is super cringy, and if it's only 7 hours long, like I think there's plenty of ways that they could fail. But in terms of the hype, I think at this point, yeah, it's too big. It's so big, they don't even need to market or try. The hype is just there. And it was the same thing with like Starfield had that level of hype. I think Elder Scrolls 6 will also have that level of hype. I think whatever the next Fallout game will have that same level of hype, even though people will point back to games that they've done that have fallen flat. The IP is just so big that it's that huge, you know. It's too big not to sell. Well, for day one, yeah, certainly. But still, I insist, maybe I have too much confidence in the consumer at the end of the day, but I think, like, for example, I don't think this would ever happen, but if it somehow occurred that GTA 6 was 5 hours long and it was super buggy and broken and it was like super cringy and it's just Suicide Squad's writing all over again, I think it would sell crazy the first day, but then the word of mouth would be so terrible that it would drop off a cliff pretty quickly. And yeah, but I don't think that's gonna happen, but I do think it technically could. Theoretically.
Written for Grand Theft Auto 6. What's it feel like Grand Theft Auto 6 returning to Vice City? This is over 20 years later, but the original GTA Vice City game was set in the 80s. So maybe inspired by Scarface a little bit?
Scarface, Miami Vice.
Miami Vice.
And our 80s childhoods. You know, what I realized quite a while ago, unfortunately, was that we made that game and it was set, I think, in 86. And we made it in 2002, so it's 6.
Dude, what a vibe.
SuperDonut_1988 donated $10 through Super Chat.
Thank you.
Hey Luke, do you think Sam Houser has that same creative focus, not being overly focused on profit, like his brother? Especially since he's president of Rockstar Games?
That's my understanding is that they're pretty much on the same wavelength with it. I think, again, it goes back to what Strauss Zelnick said, the CEO of Take-Two, who's ultimately in charge. If Strauss Zelnick said, you guys, we're not doing a single player mode for GTA 6, we're just doing online. If he said that, that's what would have to happen because he's the CEO of the parent company, but he doesn't say that. Strauss's approach as the leader of the whole ship has been to trust Rockstar and get out of their way, to support them, empower them, but to trust their process and trust that they know what they're doing and get out of their way. Let them do what they need to do to make the best game possible. And that is what's led them to the amazing success that they've seen, in my opinion. Some might say that it's just been luck. Some might say that it's just been, you know, the scandals which have helped blow up the franchise into mass success. But personally, I think that it's mainly a leadership thing, and it's been a collaborative effort across the whole team. And there really just are not that many examples of massive studios that have all the money they need, not endless money, but all the money they need, and they have leadership that's willing to trust and support them to make the best game they can without those secondary requirements of make it 1,000 hours long, put all this extra DLC into the single player campaign. Like, that's not what they're doing here, which is very good in my opinion.
16 years after, and now it's way past 16 years since Vice City came out. So it was the 80s were not that long ago when we made it.
You know, I think Miami is one of the most unique cities in the world.
Oh yeah,
especially if you're thinking about satirizing American culture. It has this duality of a glossy surface and a dark underworld. It has the influencers, it has the crypto bros, the yachts, bikinis, plastic surgery, sports cars, drugs, cartel cash, luxury, super rich people, and the desperately poor, just the whole of it. Would it be like the perfect city to explore the full cast of characters that are possible, that human nature can generate?
I think it's one of them. You know, there's a reason why GTA kept coming back to Miami, New York, Los Angeles. I think they're all very good for exactly what you laid out. You know, you could say move it to any of those and it would work. You know.
So yeah, there's a melting pot aspect to New York also, right?
Yeah, a melting pot aspect to LA. You know, there's glitz, glamour, underbelly, immigrants. You know, enormous wealth in all of them. I think those are what I think are really fun for any, not even just for GTA, but for anything where you want a kind of slice of life, almost like a sort of psychotic version of a Dickens book. You know, this big slice of life. He did it with London. You know, this psychotic.
Yeah, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. It was the winter of despair. I do love A Tale of Two Cities. It's freaking fantastic. Do I actually have... It might be upstairs. It might be on my bedroom bookshelf. But yeah, actually, I got a new copy of Tale of Two Cities, actually, because I love it so much. Anyway, it's... I do think that this is one thing that is going to be fascinating to see. GTA has always been sort of a broader critique and commentary on and satirization of American culture. And, you know, if you go back and you play the campaign of GTA 5, it's very much a product of its time where it was making fun of games or of things like American Idol, for example. You remember, I forget his name, the one dude with the ponytail. You take him to the LA River, basically, and make him take off his pants and dance on video and stuff for humiliating Michael's daughter. And, you know, broader discussions over, they made fun of Facebook with Life Invader and all of that. It was Laszlo, that's it. Fame or shame. Yeah, literally. And I think they're going to do the same thing in this game. They're going to make fun of modern American culture. And some people, I think, will interpret that as preaching, which is going to be funny because it's the same thing they've done always. But there's a lot more. I think both. I think there's a lot of people who will take offense to it, who have historically tried to present themselves as being chill and cool with it. But like, they're going to make fun of crypto bros. I have no doubt. They're going to make fun of them, make them seem like incel losers. I think they're going to make fun of, I'm sure, like the college campus snowflake types. I think they're going to make fun of the political elite. I think they'll make fun of the billionaires who are trying to act cool, even though they have nothing in common with the people they're trying to act cool towards. Like, they're going to make fun of everybody because that's what they do. And I would not be surprised if you see some of those types of guys, like the culture warrior types, see something that they've championed get made fun of, and they'll start calling for boycotts and stuff. Just mark my words. Those same guys were trying to call for boycotts of like KCD2, and they were calling for boycotts of Monster Hunter Wilds, not because the game was broken or anything, but literally because like they thought the character designs weren't hot enough or something. Like, you just never know. You never know. Okay. Yeah, I would bet you good money there will be an Elon foil representative, whatever, simulacrum in the game. There will be a version of Elon in the game, I think, for sure. But anyway, continuing.
Version of these, big, all kinds of characters in a melting pot. Any of these global cities work well for that.
Do you know if that was ever consideration to go elsewhere to like a London?
We made a little thing in London 26 years ago, GTA London, for the top down for the PS1. That was pretty cute and fun as the first mission pack ever for PlayStation 1. I think for a full GTA game, we always decided it was there was so much Americana inherent in the IP, it would be really hard to make it work in London or anywhere else.
It's the same thing with Fallout. People have asked, like, why not take Fallout to Europe or to Asia or something? And I just think there's just something about the 1950s doo-wop, like Leave It to Beaver vibe of Fallout. It's just inherent to American culture, and it's the same thing with GTA. Like, I think it's tied there. There's ways to explore it. There's things like he said with small packs, and I think there's spin-off things you could do to kind of visit it and experience it. Of course, Fallout London, the modder package that they experimented with is fun, but in terms of big mainline entries, I'm not sure how well it crosses over. Yeah, fans did, and I thought they did a good job of it too, but I also think it felt just different. It was good, but I still think Fallout London just felt a little bit different, Fallout Scandinavia, that could be interesting. That could be funny.
You needed guns, you needed these larger than life characters. It just felt like the game was so much about America, possibly from an outsider's perspective, but.
But I think that kind of helps the fact that Rockstar, they're coming from a British persuasion. And that helps them look at it just with a different pair of glasses, different perspective. I think it helps because if you're an American company trying to make a game satirizing American culture, you'll inevitably kind of end up satirizing one half or the other more. I think that just happens a lot. But when you're on the outside, you can just make fun of all of it because it all seems insane.
That was so much about what the thing was that it wouldn't really have worked in the same way elsewhere.
So you've created, I don't know how many, over 10 Grand Theft Auto games.
I think so.
I have to ask, is it a little bit bittersweet to say goodbye to the Grand Theft Auto world and having to watch Grand Theft Auto 6 released? Or is it more excitement? What's the feeling?
I think it's how would I describe it? Of course, it's all of the above. It's exactly as you pleased to be doing other stuff, excited for what we're working on now, super excited. Of course, letting go of something I worked on it one way or another for like 20 odd years, and wrote on the last 10 or 11 that came out, wrote all of them, or, lead writer on all of them, whatever it was. So of course, letting go of that is a big change and a lot and sad in a way, because it was, each of the games was a kind of standalone story. It's not quite the same as I think probably it would be in some ways sadder if someone continued on Red Dead because it was a cohesive 2-game arc. That might be more sad to hear someone working on that. But again, that will probably happen too. I don't own the IP. That was the sort of part of the the deal. It's a privilege to work on stuff, but you don't necessarily own it.
I have to imagine it's kind of exciting, though, to have worked on that so long from the inside that he'll get to play GTA 6 and just enjoy it. Because when you build something, when you make something, you're kind of in too deep to really appreciate it, because it's like you saw how the sausage was made. So it's not really something you can enjoy in that typical way. But because he's been so involved with it, now he's separated from it and he's on the outside. He'll actually be able to play it and enjoy it just as a fan playing a game, which I'm sure has to be kind of a cool experience.
You're done with the game, does it always feel like a goodbye? Like when you're done with Red Dead 2, is like you're saying goodbye to Arthur? Like the characters you created, you're walking away.
You kind of are saying goodbye to Arthur in the end of the game, even before the end of the game. Yeah, I think you've got, I've been with them for 7-8 years, and you have to kind of let it go, or you can't go on to the next one.
Yeah.
So there's always this thing of okay, that's done. And sometimes people would ask me questions about older games. And certainly when I was in the middle of making new ones in the set, I couldn't really necessarily even remember. I've got a pretty good memory normally because you kind of have to let it go. So it's you're so immersed in it and thinking about it. And certainly in that last period, the last few months, you're really, really immersed in every little nuance and every little detail all of the time. And then you're just not thinking about it in the same way.
Yeah, it's funny from the player perspective. It feels like an old friend that I miss, whether it's John or Arthur or Nico. It's a real goodbye. There's a real sadness to finishing a video game. Like,
I hope so.
Legitimately a sad experience, not just because this.
Well, I think what he just said is really telling. I hope so. The most impactful and compelling games I've ever played, I've been sad to finish because you're closing the last page of the book. You're putting a close to it, and after that, you can reread it, you can re-experience it, but it's always going to be different. And that's what it was with the end of Red Dead 2. That's what it was at the end of The Witcher 3. That's what it was at the end of Expedition 33, KCD 2. Just to name a few off the top of mind. But that's a very powerful thing, It's a powerful thing. It's like they say, the cost of love is loss. And in order to love something, you have to be willing and capable of losing it. And in the case of these stories and these relationships you build with characters and all that, it's really, I don't know, it can be a sad moment to say goodbye, at the end of it. But that's how you had an impactful experience, because there's been some games we've played where it's like, thank God this is over. But in the case of these types of games that we're discussing, it's not a miserable sadness. It's like an appreciative sadness, bittersweet. Yeah, sure. I'll leave that section there because I don't want to get into spoilers for the comic books if you want to check them out. But yeah, Dan, very, very successful and I clearly very respected game developer. Fascinating hearing his insights on that. He also spent a good while talking for like 40 minutes about 40 minutes on Red Dead 2. We could also check that out because he has a whole extensive breakdown of the development of that and the process of building that. So we could look at that as well. But for this segment, we'll leave that there. But it's always fascinating to hear him. For me, the big takeaways are, for one, that he's not building things to be financially successful. He's just building them to be the best they can. And he's been empowered and supported to do that. He's not trying to just create like what's going to on paper be the commercial hit. He's building the best thing that they possibly can. And what they're trying to do is build the best open world adventure game that they can while telling a compelling story. And they've clearly done that very, very successfully, repeatedly. And I think that's just... People ask, like, what's the magic sauce? What's the magic of Rockstar? Why are they able to be so successful in this pursuit when other companies have struggled? And I really think it does just come down to the leadership and the company culture and how they've supported them and built this out so that they can spend 5-6 years building something that is not built to just inflate player hours. It's not built to just milk players with secondary DLC and microtransactions and all that. They're just genuinely trying to create a compelling world and story and work their ass off to do it. And there's a cost to that, not just monetarily, but also in terms of crunch and the work that they put into it. But pretty clearly it's been successful. And It looks like they're setting themselves up for a similar success with GTA 6, but time will tell. He took my thing.